A black waiter was working tirelessly to earn money for his child's medical treatment. During one of his shifts, he noticed an elderly white couple celebrating their wedding anniversary. The husband was feeding his elderly wife while his own meal grew cold. Without hesitation, the waiter stepped forward to help them enjoy their meal more comfortably. But just minutes later, he was scolded and fired for overstepping his duties. What he never knew was that a photo capturing that moment would reach the couple's billionaire son, and that encounter would change his life forever. Before we continue, tell us what time it is and where you're watching from. Subscribe, because tomorrow I have something special for you. The coffee machine at Rosie's Diner had been making the same grinding noise for 3 weeks straight, a mechanical wheeze that sounded like it was taking its last breath. Marcus Hayes stood behind the counter in the pre-dawn darkness, wiping down surfaces that were already clean because Sharon didn't tolerate idle hands even when there were no customers to serve. Marcus was 35 years old, a black man with careful movements and quieter words, the kind of person who'd learned early that the world judged him by different rules. He'd been working at Rosie's for 5 months now, 5 months of showing up 15 minutes early, staying 10 minutes late, never calling in sick, never asking for favors. The diner was a relic from the 1950s, all chrome and red vinyl, checkerboard floors, and a jukebox that hadn't worked since before Marcus was born. It sat on the edge of Millbrook, Ohio, a town where factories had closed and hope had gotten expensive. Marcus, Sharon's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. She emerged from the back office, clipboard pressed against her chest, eyes scanning for imperfection. The napkin dispensers on tables 3 and 7 are only half full. Company policy requires full or replaced before opening. Yes, ma'am, I'll take care of it right now. Sharon Mitchell was a woman in her early 50s who ran the diner like it was a military installation. Every rule mattered. Every violation was documented. Every deviation from protocol was a personal affront. She'd explained her philosophy to him on his first day. Corporate audits us quarterly. 1 major violation and they dock my quarterly bonus by 20%. 3 violations and I'm terminated. So when I say something needs to be done a certain way, it's not a suggestion. Marcus understood. Sharon wasn't just enforcing rules, she was protecting herself in the only way she knew how, by making everyone around her as afraid as she was. He refilled the napkin dispensers, topped off the sugar packets, made sure every ketchup bottle was wiped spotless. The work was repetitive, mind-numbing, but it was work. And work meant health insurance, the bare minimum kind that still left them drowning in medical bills, but it was something. His daughter Emma needed that something. He'd been up since 4:30 that morning, same as always. Emma had woken coughing, that wet rattling sound that made his chest tight with fear. His wife Nina had handled the breathing treatment while Marcus made breakfast, oatmeal stretched thin because they were 3 days from payday and the grocery money was gone. At 6 he'd driven Emma to her bi-weekly checkup at the pulmonary clinic, waited in the too bright waiting room while they ran tests he couldn't afford to fully understand, then dropped her back home before his 7 o'clock shift. The doctors called it idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, a complicated name for we don't know why your 12-year-old daughter's lungs are scarring themselves to death. The treatment was experimental, expensive, and their only hope. Marcus carried the weight of that hope the way other men carried wallets, constant, essential, terrifying to lose. Front section is ready, he reported to Sharon. She checked her watch, prepped the coffee station. Morning customers start arriving in 18 minutes. There was rarely much of a morning rush anymore, but Sharon maintained the schedule because the alternative was admitting the diner was dying. Marcus had seen the numbers on a report she'd left on the counter last week. They were down to 4 servers from 9 last year, and the corporate office was talking about reducing hours. He couldn't afford reduced hours. He couldn't afford anything going wrong. So he showed up early, worked harder, kept his head down, and made himself invisible in all the ways that mattered. Behind him the kitchen door swung open and Luis Martinez came through, the morning line cook who'd been at Rosie's for 12 years. "Morning, Marcus, you here early again? Couldn't sleep?" Luis glanced toward the office where Sharon was reviewing inventory sheets. "She's been extra tight lately, corporate's been on her about quarterly numbers." "I know, just keep your head down, do your work." "You're doing fine." Luis headed to the grill. "Better than fine actually. Best server we've had in years." Marcus appreciated the words but didn't let himself believe them. Being good at your job only mattered if the people measuring your performance actually cared. By 9 o'clock, the breakfast rush had come and gone. Old Pete Holloway sat in his usual booth reading the newspaper. A construction worker grabbed coffee to go. Two teenagers cut class and nursed sodas in the corner, whispering to each other and ignoring the world. Marcus moved between tables with practiced efficiency, refilling coffee, clearing plates, smiling politely at customers who rarely acknowledged him. He'd learned the rhythm of this place, the unspoken rules that lived underneath the printed policies. Don't make eye contact too long. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't give anyone a reason to remember you for the wrong reasons. In his pocket, folded into careful squares, were 3 envelopes. Medical bills. He didn't open them anymore, just collected them from the mailbox and carried them around like talismans of failure. Nina said they should consider bankruptcy, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that would make everything more permanent somehow, like admitting they'd never climb out of this hole. His phone buzzed, a text from Nina, Emma's O2 at 90, watching it. She's resting, oxygen saturation. Another number he'd learned to track, another measure of how close they were to the edge. 90 was the threshold where they started worrying. Below that, they went to the ER. Marcus, table 8 needs menus. Sharon's voice again, always monitoring, always measuring. He grabbed 2 menus and headed to booth 8 in the back corner, the one with the best morning light, the one where, he stopped. It was William and Patricia Grant, the Tuesday regulars who came in every week like clockwork. But today was different. William wore a suit jacket, old but well-maintained, and Patricia had on a pale yellow dress with small white flowers. There was a corsage pinned to her collar, a single white rose that looked fresh from a florist. "Good morning, Mr. Grant, Mrs. Grant." Marcus set down the menus carefully. "Morning, Marcus." William's voice was warm, and he was smiling wider than usual. 50 years today, half a century married to this beautiful woman right here. Can you believe that? Patricia looked up at Marcus with pale blue eyes that seemed to focus somewhere past his face, somewhere distant and confused. She was thinner than last week, smaller somehow, like she was slowly disappearing into herself. "Congratulations," Marcus said, and meant it. "That's really something special." "Thank you, son." William helped Patricia into the booth with such careful tenderness it made Marcus's throat tight. She moved slowly, each step requiring visible concentration, and when she finally sat down she looked exhausted from the simple effort of crossing 10 feet. Marcus took their order, scrambled eggs and wheat toast for both, black coffee for William, hot tea with honey for Patricia, and headed back to the kitchen. Through the serving window he watched them sitting together, William holding Patricia's hand across the table, talking quietly about things Marcus couldn't hear. 50 years, Marcus had been married to Nina for 13, and some days that felt like both forever and not nearly long enough. 13 years of splitting bills and sharing dreams and holding each other when the dreams cracked apart. 13 years of learning that love was less about the big romantic gestures and more about showing up every single day, even when, especially when showing up was the hardest thing you could do. He thought about Nina at home with Emma, monitoring oxygen levels, timing medications, pretending everything was fine when their daughter asked if they had money for the school field trip next month. They didn't have money for the field trip, they barely had money for groceries. But they had each other, and that was going to have to be enough. Luis looked at him through the serving window. "You good man, yeah. Just thinking about those folks at table 8, the anniversary couple, yeah." Luis nodded. 50 years, that's the dream, right? Finding someone and actually making it work. "That's the dream," Marcus agreed and went back to work. 20 minutes later, Marcus returned to table 8 with their breakfast plates. The morning light streamed through the big windows, catching dust motes in the air, making everything look softer somehow. The diner had emptied out after the brief morning activity, just Pete still reading his paper and a woman at the corner booth working on a laptop. Sharon was in the back office reviewing supply orders. Luis and Danny were cleaning the kitchen. For a moment, the world felt suspended, quiet, like a held breath. Marcus set the plates down carefully. "Here you go, folks. Can I get you anything else?" "We're just fine, thank you," William said, but Marcus could see the problem immediately. Patricia was trying to pick up her fork, but her hands weren't cooperating. The tremor he'd noticed in previous weeks was worse today, or maybe he'd just never watched this closely. She managed to grip the handle, lifted it maybe 2 inches, and then it clattered back against the plate. Here, honey, let me help you. William reached across the table trying to cut her eggs while managing his own plate, while adjusting the small vase with the single rose that kept threatening to tip over. Marcus stood there watching this man trying to do everything at once: feed his wife, eat his own breakfast, keep their 50th anniversary special, and something cracked open in his chest. He thought about Nina this morning, exhausted, handling Emma's breathing treatment alone while he rushed out the door for work. He thought about all the times he'd wanted to be in two places at once, wanted to be enough for everyone who needed him. The diner was quiet. Sharon was in the office. His section was completely covered. There were no other customers waiting, no urgent tasks demanding his attention. Marcus made a decision. "Mr. Grant," he said quietly, "would it be all right if I gave you a hand for just a minute? So you can enjoy your own breakfast while it's still warm?" William looked up, surprise and something that might have been relief crossing his weathered face. "Oh, you don't have to, I know, sir, but it's your anniversary, you should get to enjoy it together." William's eyes got wet. That would be very kind of you." Marcus didn't sit down. That felt too familiar, too much like he was joining their celebration uninvited. Instead, he stood beside the booth, maintaining a respectful distance. He picked up Patricia's fork, cut a small piece of her scrambled eggs, and held it where she could reach it easily. She looked at him with those pale blue eyes, and for a moment there was clarity there, full awareness cutting through whatever fog usually surrounded her. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome, ma'am." He helped her with a few more bites while William quickly ate some of his own breakfast and adjusted the vase so the rose stood straight and secure. The whole thing took maybe 5 minutes, no more than that. 5 minutes of standing beside a booth in a quiet diner, helping an elderly woman eat her anniversary breakfast while her husband had a moment to breathe and be present with her. When Patricia had eaten about half her eggs and seemed tired, Marcus set the fork down gently. "I think you've got it from here, Mr. Grant. Thank you, son." William's voice was rough with emotion. "Thank you so much, you have no idea what that meant to us." Marcus nodded and headed back toward the kitchen, thinking that was the end of it. Thinking he'd just done a small kindness that wouldn't ripple beyond this morning, this booth, these two people. He was wrong. In the corner booth, hidden behind her laptop screen, Jennifer Cole had watched the whole thing. She was a freelance writer, barely making rent on articles about local businesses and human interest stories for regional magazines. She'd been working on a piece about Millbrook's struggling downtown, but she'd looked up at exactly the right moment to see something else entirely. She'd seen genuine compassion in action, quiet dignity, a man helping another person for no reason except that help was needed and he was able to provide it. And she'd taken a photo discreetly, with her phone, capturing the moment Marcus stood beside the booth helping Patricia Grant, the morning light making everything look almost sacred. Jennifer stared at that photo now, then looked up to see Marcus heading back to the kitchen, and felt something like anger kindle in her chest at what she knew was probably coming next. She'd been in this diner enough times to know how Sharon Mitchell operated. Marcus had just reached the kitchen when Sharon's voice cut through the quiet like a whip crack. "Marcus Hayes, my office, right now." His stomach dropped. Louise shot him a concerned look from the grill. Danny stopped scrubbing a pan. Everyone in the kitchen suddenly went very still. "Yes, ma'am." He followed Sharon past the kitchen, past the storage room, into the cramped back office that smelled like stale coffee and industrial air freshener. Sharon closed the door with a decisive click and turned to face him, clipboard pressed against her chest like armor. "What were you doing at table 8? The Grants needed. I saw what you were doing. You were feeding a customer." Mrs. Grant was having trouble with her fork, and Mr. Grant was trying to. "Did that customer explicitly request feeding assistance? Did they call you over and formally ask for help eating their meal?" Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. "Not exactly, but then what you did was make unauthorized physical contact with a customer without prior consent, which directly